this game gets to fantasy's roots way better than 5e. Hey there, adventurers. My name is Judd, and this is Short Rest Studios, where we believe fun builds community. Conan, Elric, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, The Dying Earth, the classics of sword and sorcery are smaller stories, though the epic isn't totally out of the question. They're gritty, and they often pit the barbarian against the civilized, or the sword against the sorcery. As great as I believe D&D 5e is, it doesn't work for these kind of adventures. I'm not the only one saying it. The Alexandrian says if you're running a sword and sorcery adventure, don't use Dungeons & Dragons. Unless you want to ban or severely limit your spellcasting classes, and there has to be a better way, right? Well, here are 5 great tabletop role-playing games that get sword and sorcery right, and stick around for a few that didn't make the list but definitely deserve a mention. Number 5, Castles and Crusades. Some folks call this one the proto-OSR game. The publisher, Trollord Games, describes it as a game with countless possibilities. It first came along in 2004, and it's been in print ever since. CNC was published under the D&D 3rd edition OGL, but it really has more in common with 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons than 3E or Pathfinder 1E. AD&D had its share of weird mechanics like wild saving throw matrices and the beloved to hit armor class 0 mechanic. Castles and Crusades tries to maintain the feel of AD&D while ironing out some of those mechanical wrinkles. For example, CNC uses ascending armor class in combat and you make most checks with a d20, but it also hangs on to a lot of stuff that modern gamers might find annoying, like class-specific XP tables and fire and forget spells. There are no subclasses or skills, and sometimes the writing can come off as a bit unintuitive. But Castles and Crusades captures the classic pulp fantasy feel by creating an environment where the player's ingenuity means more than the abilities and weapons and numbers on their character sheets. Earlier, I mentioned that CNC characters don't have skills. Instead, the game uses a mechanic called the Siege Engine. Each class has a fixed primary attribute, and each player gets to choose a second one. When you want to do something, the GM, known as the Castle Keeper, decides which attribute they'll use. A primary attribute sets a base DC of 12, and others start at 18. The Siege Engine is pretty simple, and it gives players opportunities to just try stuff instead of getting locked into only what's on their character sheet.
Speaking in Dwarvish drew a flat reply, no trespassing, before the feral Ashen Wights advanced, crystal shards jutting from ruined flesh. Fire blossomed among them. Agrippa and Zavor cut them down. German's holy axe turned one to ash.
Adventurers, that's a recap of one of my most recent sessions made by ScribeQuill. ScribeQuill uses AI technology ethically. All the art and music are created by real artists who are paid for their work. Even the voices are licensed from real voice actors, and your info is never used to train AI models. All you do is upload an audio recording of your session, and you get a full audio transcription, text recaps, a session outline, iconic quotes from your players, audio and video recaps, a self-updating campaign wiki, and a shareable web page. $20 gets you 5 sessions of notes, and the first one is free. Check out ScribeQuill at scribequill.com. Coming in 4th, Streets of Peril. Streets of Peril is gritty and brutal in the best possible way. It leans into the sword and sorcery, even though its setting draws on real history for inspiration. The Cimbrian Empire is a collection of loosely aligned city-states peopled by humans who were once ruled over by elves. There are noble houses, trade guilds, mercenary companies, dark cults, criminal societies placed against the backdrop of a crumbling nation. And if you're big on production quality like me, Streets of Peril is hard to beat. It's got high-quality, fun artwork. The books are beautifully bound with integrated ribbon bookmarks and thick, sturdy pages. Really well done. Streets of Peril runs on the Perilous D6 system, which is a pay-what-you-want download on DriveThruRPG, if you want to check it out. It's a dice pool system that uses 6 different colored D6s. Rolling 4 and up on the white dice is a success, 3 and up is a success on the red dice, 2 and up is a success on the black dice. Modifiers adjust the number of dice in your pool, and the dice explode on a 6 or more. Combat uses opposed rolls, usually the attacker's fighting skill or ranged skill against the defender's defense skill. As far as weapons, you've got the usual swords and magic, but there are also bombs and blunderbusses and muskets. Character creation and advancement in Streets of Peril are something to talk about. Each PC has 6 attributes, a lineage, a class, and 3 ambitions, and one of those ambitions they share with the other PCs. Working toward those ambitions gives you XP, which really encourages players to role-play that aspect of their character. In the number 3 spot, Black Sword Hack. In the struggle between law and chaos, you might lose your life or even your soul, but you'll go to your doom knowing you fought till the bitter end. Black Sword Hack falls squarely into the OSR playstyle. It's built on the Black Hack, which itself was based on D&D and has given rise to a bunch of games with hack in the title. It uses straightforward rules that are easy to modify or even ignore, and the inspiration of classic fantasy and sci-fi masters like Michael Moorcock, Fritz Leiber, Jack Vance, and Robert E. Howard is in pretty much every aspect of the Ultimate Chaos Edition. Black Sword Hack is again a D20 system. In combat, players roll their attacks, and then instead of just waiting for the GM to roll for enemies, the players also roll for defense against incoming attacks. Character creation, though, is where the game shows its uniqueness. You roll 2d6 for stats, which means that exceptionally high or low stats are rare. There are 3 categories of origins for players to choose from: barbarian, civilized, and decadent. You get to choose 3 backgrounds based on your origin, and each of those provides a stat bump and a special ability. You can mix and match those background abilities to create something unique and powerful. And despite that power, though, Black Sword Hack is still dark and deadly, and it wears its sword and sorcery influences on its sleeve. The runner-up is Vagabond. Vagabond is the only game on this list created by a fellow Dungeon Tuber. Dungeon Tuber sounds like a potato or a new monster. Anyway, Vagabond was created by Terran Pounds, perhaps better known as Indestructo Boy, inspired by medieval romance stories, sword and sorcery, dungeon synth. You know dungeon synth, right? Everybody listens to dungeon synth. Seriously, put some on while you're playing Vagabond and you will feel like you're in a Conan story. Vagabond is old school style gaming with the kind of character options modern players love, and the game promises things will get weird. Vagabond is a D20 system. The 200-odd page book is packed with everything you need to play, including gorgeous artwork and great GM guidelines. One of the standout characteristics of Vagabond is actually the core book's slick organization and ease of use at the table. But all the freaking options are what make it shine. Don't let the stripped-down character sheet fool you. Vagabond has 18 classes to choose from, 7 ancestries, more than 100 perks that give you more customization options for your class, and there are more than 60 spells that you can also customize. Vagabond's classes include the standard fantasy fare, fighter, barbarian, wizard, rogue, but if you're looking for something a little different, you can choose a gunslinger, an alchemist, or a dancer if that's what you're into. There are no subclasses, but as your character levels up, you can customize them through perks. Adding a couple of these perks like cardistry allows you to basically build your own subclass. Add to that Vagabond's unique combat mechanics, and you've got a system that bridges old school and new in some unique and fun ways. Now, before we jump to number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Most of these didn't make the list, at least in part because I've talked about them in other videos. Dungeon Crawl Classics. DCC is one of my favorite games with its brutality and crazy magic. Hyperborea, an update of AD&D set in a pulpy, weird fantasy world. Oathhammer. I haven't had a chance to check this one out, but it was born out of Streets of Peril, and I hear nothing but good things about it. And my number 1 pick for a TTRPG that nails sword and sorcery, Barbarians of Lemuria. When someone asks the question, what tabletop role-playing game really gets sword and sorcery right, at least one person is going to say Barbarians of Lemuria. Players journey through horrifying jungles, sail the high seas with pirates, get lost in a city full of assassins, explore the tombs of sorcerer kings. BOL is a rules-light system inspired by fantasy author Lynn Carter's Lemurian Chronicles, and the Mythic Plus edition, the latest release, has gorgeous action-oriented black and white art that harkens back to that old-school sword and sorcery. The setting is primal, low magic, and appropriately mysterious. The Mythic Plus Edition's layout is clear and easy to navigate, unlike some old school games. You know I love you, DCC, but I'm looking at you. There's tons of great material here, including tips for running the game, ship-to-ship combat, and a boatload of monsters, but the actual core rules fit on a couple pages. It's a 2d6 system. When you want to perform a task, you make a task roll, add appropriate attributes or combat abilities or other situational modifiers. If the result is 9 or more, you make it happen. A nat 2 always fails, a nat 12 always succeeds. This incredibly simple rule set gives players a ton of freedom and makes the action fast and furious, just like Sword and Sorcery should be. There's also a great career system. Based on your character's career, you know what your capabilities are. Thieves can sneak around and break into stuff. Pirates can handle a ship. And the more experienced you are in your career, you allocate points to it that represent this, the better you are at those skills, until eventually you may not even need to roll for stuff you used to struggle with. Adventurers, those are 5 games. They get Sword and Sorcery fantasy right in a way that D&D isn't built for. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you got something out of this content, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks to the members of the Adventurers Guild. Your support helps me keep making content like this. If you're not a member yet, you can become one at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button right under this video. There are tons of epic fantasy RPGs with some really cool mechanics. Check them out in this video, then get out there and have an adventure.